So we know when CNN covers Syria and the gas attacks, they do it like this. They send a reporter, who, by the way, is the granddaughter of the deposed president of Syria, and she picks up a backpack and does this.
And there's definitely something that stings.
Okay. So that's a CNN reporter in Syria letting you know that there was definitely a gas attack because she went and sniffed some poison gas on a bag. That's exactly what you would do. Hey, is that poison? Give me it. Yep, that's definitely... So, you know how all the reporters go to Flint, they immediately start drinking the water by the gallon. So the Douma attack, the gas attack, we've debunked it here on the show. I want to recap it really quickly. So these are pictures of the shells they said were, look, it's landed in a bed. You see that it's in a bed. It's on someone's porch. And here, see, there's the guy standing there. There it is. We've got it. It's the gas attack. The New York Times actually, they reported that they created a virtual crime scene. Did you ever see this, Aaron?
I did. Yeah, I did.
So the New York Times created a virtual crime scene to investigate Syria's chemical attack. They didn't go to Syria, but then they had some artists kind of create it in the way that they thought it happened. And boy, if I'm ever, as Mike McRae said, if I'm ever accused of murder, I hope they don't actually investigate the crime scene, but I hope that someone imagines the crime scene, which is what the New York Times did. They literally did this, and here's their conclusion. The New York Times said, we were unable to visit Douma, but to get the truth of what happened, we forensically analyzed the visual evidence unwittingly provided by the Russian reports. Combining those pictures with other videos filmed by Syrian activists, we reconstructed a 3D model of the building, the balcony, and the bomb in partnership with Goldsmith University of London Research Agency and Forensic Architecture, and they concluded it happened. They even won an award for it. Guess what? They're 100% wrong. And I knew they were wrong before they even put this report out. We debunked them. Because real reporters were actually, by Robert Fisk, were already on the ground there, interviewing doctors, interviewing people. Nobody verified that there was a gas attack. Nobody. So the OPCW, so when you see this, they said that was real. That was placed there by someone. And you know how I know that was placed there by someone on the ground? It didn't come from Assad's helicopters or planes. Well, because there was a leaked report from the OPCW, an engineer's report, that was written but was not included in the final report. And what did that engineer's report say? That engineers, in summary, observations at the scene of the two locations together with subsequent analysis suggests that there is a higher probability that both cylinders were manually placed there at those two locations rather than being delivered from aircraft. So that says didn't happen. They took that out of the report. So that was so then Chris Hayes tells you Assad is gassing his own people. He's not. I debunked it. Robert Fisk debunked it. The New York Times went along and they lied to you too. Well, whistleblower after whistleblower has come out saying that the OPCW has been captured by the West and NATO, and they have. And so now here's the Gray Zone's reporting. This is yours, Aaron. It says the Gray Zone has obtained documents exposing falsehoods and misleading claims by the OPCW Director General Fernando Arias to degrade the reputation of Douma whistleblower Ian Henderson. So the guy who wrote this is Ian Henderson.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then you found out some documents. I don't know how you got a hold of them. Your good reporting that showed that Arias and the inquiry team have asserted that Ian Henderson, the guy who wrote that, was not an official participant in the Douma investigation. Henderson, they claimed, was not a member of the FFM, which is the fact-finding mission from the OPCW, and instead that he was merely, quote, accompanied the FFM to certain sites of interest in a minor supporting role. So they tried to downplay what that guy did. They're trying to say he wasn't even really a part of it. But you uncovered some documents, and I'm going to show them to people. that internal documents from the OPCW that actually betrays that lie. And it said, if you look at here, it says afterwards, ODG is happy if the visits to the cylinders and hospital are led by Ian Henderson. So that's an internal document that you discovered that said, no, contrary to what the OPCW is saying, he actually was leading the investigation. In fact, here he is. There's his name. The mission personnel. There it is. You uncovered that. There it is. That's his name. FFM. Here is the OPCW mission on Syria. So they also said that the only reason that guy was part of that was because he was there. Well, why don't you explain to it? What was the excuse that they gave, Aaron, of why Ian Henderson was working with the FFM?
So again, just what you're seeing right in front of you is a cover-up, and all these that documents are showing. So, as you say, Jimmy, Henderson's conclusions undermine the official narrative that the Syrian government committed a gas attack in Douma. What Henderson's conclusions pointed to is that this was staged on the ground. So when his report was leaked, the OPCW had a serious problem because the evidence that came out, his report, and then other leaks that came out, kept undermining the official narrative that the OPCW had put forward, advancing the Trump administration's narrative. And by the way, one of the leaks that we heard, that we got, was that the Trump administration actually directly pressured the OPCW, where there was a delegation of U.S. officials who came to the OPCW, which is totally unprecedented, and basically told the inspectors, told the team of which Ian Henderson was a part, that Assad was guilty and that was the conclusion they had to draw, which is completely unacceptable pressure. And that was one of the leaks we got. So when all this came out, OPCW had a problem. What do we do about Ian Henderson, given that he investigated this and his findings undermine the narrative that we've signed on to? So their only answer, I guess they decided, was to denigrate him. So they lied about him. They said he played a minor supporting role in the Douma investigation in Syria, and that he was not even a member of the team. But as you showed, those documents totally undermine that. They show that not only was he actually an official member of the fact-checking mission, but that the office of the Director General at the time asked that he lead the most critical inspections, the inspections of the hospital where the alleged victims were taken, and the cylinders, the crime scene where the gas cylinders were found. And the reason why Henderson was asked to do this is because he is a career OPCW official who's been with them since 1997 and was the only member of that entire team who has the expertise that he has in chemical engineering and ballistics. So these documents show basically that the OPCW leadership has been lying, that in order to cover up their cover-up, they've been lying about Ian Henderson. And so the last document there you mentioned was basically they had to come up with an excuse for why Henderson was in Syria to begin with. They falsely said he was not there they falsely said he wasn't there to be a part of the investigation, even though he was. So instead they said that he happened to be there to oversee the OPCW command post in Damascus. And so because he was there anyway, he assisted and accompanied the Douma mission to Douma to investigate the cylinders and help them out. What they omitted was the documents that we obtained showing that actually the OPCW leadership at the time asked that he lead those inspections because he was such a critical member of that team. So it's a huge scandal, it's a huge fraud, and just like Russiagate, it's not being discussed at all in the mainstream media because it undermines a narrative that everybody, such as the New York Times, bought into.
Isn't that amazing that ubiquitous coverage of the gas attack, because that would lead to war? And that's what the military-industrial complex wants. Raytheon wants a couple of $1 million bombs blown up every day, and they own the news media, so then the news media does what they say. It's actually pretty direct like that. And
it did. And by the way, Jimmy, it did lead to military strike.
It did.
Shortly after the Douma allegation, Trump and the U.S. and the UK bombed Syria, multiple sites. And so, yeah, I mean, it did lead to military action. And so you'd think, I mean, just as we saw with the Iraq War, when we found out that the Bush administration had peddled this scam to us and pressured other people to go along, that was a huge scandal. Now we're finding out the exact same thing and literally virtual silence. I've said this before publicly. I can't even get it on my old show, Democracy Now!, the show I worked for 10 years, and which is a noble show at its heart. They can't even mention it because they bought into this narrative too. It's so embarrassing for not just the corporate media, but for so many outlets that have gone along with these pro-war narratives, these pro-war lies.
Now, this really brings up a crisis in lefty journalism. What does it say about a news show that purports to be a lefty news show that covers the false propaganda straight from the military-industrial complex and the CIA that led to bombing? You cover that. You do the propaganda for that. It gets revealed that what you did was propaganda, that you misled your own viewers, and you don't cover that. How can you ever trust that news agency ever again? I can't. And what is the implications of that? What is that? What does that say?
Well, and it's also it's not just betraying the mission of covering war and covering state secrets and exposing lies, especially lies that lead to war. It's also, I mean, I've said this before on your show, but it's really important. It's also endangering the whistleblowers who bring it to light. I mean, we're all supposed to protect whistleblowers for a reason, is because they put themselves at serious risk by going public and by challenging powerful forces like the U.S. government, especially on such a sensitive issue such as revealing scams like this, hoaxes, lies that lead to military action. And these whistleblowers at the OPCW, Ian Henderson, who we know publicly, and there's another whistleblower there whose name has not been publicly confirmed, they have put themselves at extreme risk because now, outfits like Bellingcat, which is funded by the U.S. government, have been publishing all these lies about them. And so they're at risk. Their safety is at risk. And the OPCW has been attacking their reputations for the sole purpose of undermining the import of their damning findings, their actual science, the evidence that they themselves collected in Douma, Syria. And the fact that even adversarial outlets like Democracy Now! And Concept have ignored them after initially patenting the full narrative, it's such a betrayal of everything that, the noble institutions are supposed to stand for. And so I hope they snap out of it. But I'm just grateful that at least we have, on your show and at the Gray Zone, we're not going to be intimidated into ignoring this. I mean, this is to me, this is one of the most important stories of the past year, and there is more evidence to come. I can tell you that. I'm working on my next story on this. So more damning revelations are coming out.
So the Intercept hasn't even covered the whistleblowers on the OPC.
Nope. Zero. Zilch. Whereas if you look it up, published multiple columns by a columnist named Robert Mackey, who was pushing the official narrative that there was a gas attack in Syria, and they published this long article that claimed to be nuanced and ambiguous, but it also ultimately concluded that, yeah, there was a gas attack, a chlorine attack. And since then, there's been no retraction, no update, nothing, just total silence. I've honestly never seen a media censorship quite like this one, where you have even progressive outlets ignoring a story that shows the Trump administration lied us into military strikes and showing corruption at the OPCW, the world's top chemical weapons watchdog, a really important body that does a lot of really important work. We have documentation because WikiLeaks has published now so many leaks, just showing the extent of the cover-up here, how these OPCW officials censored the evidence that their own inspectors found. By the way, if you're going to Syria and you're inspecting an alleged chemical weapons attack, you're a pretty noble person. That's not easy work. You're putting yourself at risk to go out and try to do a really important task, which is ascertain the veracity of a serious chemical weapons allegation. And so these people put their lives at risk. Their organization suppresses their evidence, throws them under the bus, slams their reputation. And what does the media do? It completely ignores the story because it undermines the narrative that they all bought into. It's crazy. It's totally crazy.
It's beyond disheartening. It's beyond all that stuff. And, I always make the joke, hey, thanks for, being such a bad news agencies that leave a huge lane for me. But I don't really, I don't need the lane anymore. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?